Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're staying safe and healthy. I just wanted to go over today the first test and the first essay. It's 12 days away. You've got plenty of time, but I also wanted to give you at least 2 weekends to start writing this essay, just in case, it's been a while since you've written a literary analysis and you need my help or the writing center's help. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just go through the prompts for the paper. Okay, so let's start with the test. All right, so here on the test, you can see it's due on Tuesday, September 29th. The test will be taken through quizzes on Canvas. For test 1, you will be given 7 passages from the works we have covered so far, and you will need to choose 5 of the passages. So this worked out really well last semester. I gave 7 passages. Students picked the 5 that they wanted to answer. And as you can imagine, more passages will be voted to the longer work. So think Handmaid's Tale to probably be more than just 1 passage on Handmaid's Tale. Now, I can't force you not to look in your books because I'm not going to be there. But this test will be timed. You don't have to take it at 9:30. It will be one of those tests where I'll give you probably like at least a 12 to 15 hour time period. But once you begin the timer, you can't stop it. So you will have a set amount of time. I haven't quite worked that out in my head yet, exactly how much time I want to give you, but you'll have a set amount of time. So if, for example, you are desperately looking through your book for the passage I'm talking about, like, I don't know, did this come from Handmaid's Tale? Did this come from Preciousness? I'm not sure. You're going to run out of time and you're not going to do well. So that's just my quick little warning. Also, please remember that I Google quite well. And so some of my students have gone on to different websites and maybe cheated by taking material from other websites when they do their quote unquote analysis. And it's really, really obvious when students do that. I just wanted to warn you and remind you that that's plagiarism, that you will get a 0 on the test. Even if you just answer that way for 1 question, you will get a 0 on the test. There is no chance to take that test over again. So your grade is going to take a huge, huge hit. Plus, you get turned into the provost, Dr. Aaron Mann, and your name is added to the naughty list. If you've cheated more than once and this is your 2nd infraction, then you will automatically fail my class. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I know you're all honorable people. I know you're not even going to try that, but I just wanted to remind you that those are the consequences should you choose to cheat. Okay, if some of my students cheat because they feel very, very insecure about their ability to analyze literature. Maybe they haven't had time to read or something like that. So if you're, sort of feel backed into a corner right now and you're overwhelmed and you haven't been able to keep up and you don't feel like you're very good in analysis, please reach out to me. I don't want cheating to be like your last resort. I want you to try to be your last resort. So reach out to me, let me know, email me. We can talk you through getting you to a point where you feel confident enough to take this test. Okay, so here are the works that we've read for this semester. Marina, Preciousness, The Handmaid's Tale. Notice that Devore is not on there. Notice that Simone de Beauvoir is not on there. That doesn't mean you can't bring Devore in or Simone de Beauvoir in as you're answering. And in fact, I would love that. That would be awesome. It would really show that you're making all these connections and that you've been paying attention to the lectures and that your mind is this active, wonderful, crazy, beautiful thing. But you don't have to. It's not going to be on the test. All right, so this test consists of just 1 section, the identification section. You're going to pick 5 out of 7. Each is worth 15 points. I want you to identify from the passage if it comes from Marina, Preciousness, or Handmaid's Tale. And then I want you to give me the author of the work and who is speaking and to whom. So this gets just a little bit tricky, maybe in The Handmaid's Tale. If, for example, Offred is having a discussion with Glenn, that you would have to know that, who's speaking to whom. Sometimes, though, the passage is referring to a character. So, like, I'm going to say, like, in Preciousness, for example, that young girl narrator, it's often talked about her. She doesn't speak a great deal. So that's an example of where you would say this passage is referring to the young narrator in Preciousness. Now, we don't know her name, so that's all you can say, the young narrator or the young protagonist. Okay. If you want to get even more specific and tell me like her age, I mean, I would love that. Again, that shows how well you have read the stories in the literature. If you just say, Lispector to her readers, I'm not going to be very happy with that response. Or like author to the reader, because you could say that about everything. That doesn't really show the fineness of your mind. Okay, now here's the biggest part. So some of this is just, you know, not even memorization, because you could look this information up. But this right here gives a good indication of you read and you understood. This most important aspect for me as a literature teacher, and also as a college professor, because we're in college now, that I'm hoping that you can do more than just read and understand something, that you're actually diving deep, that you can analyze literature. Like the quality of your critical thinking skills here is really important. And I think that's, again, what we're doing in college. We're learning how to critically think. It's not just about memorization. It's not just about comprehension. So what does analysis mean? Let's read on. The significance of the passage. How does the passage touch upon a major theme of the work, and why in the plot is this a pivotal moment? You can begin your response with a paraphrase of the passage. That is, telling us what is happening. One, that shows me, again, that you read and you understood. Comprehension, very good. But I don't want you to stop there. You know, if you just tell me, this is what's happening in the passage, great. But that doesn't show analysis. It just shows that you read and you understood. Okay, I analyze more deeply. This can include, sorry, there you go. Can include making connections between the passage and other parts of the story, or between the work and other texts read for class, or between the passage and specific historical, cultural, philosophical themes addressed in the novel, the poem, the short story. Make sure to underline specific words. Draw arrows. I don't know why this is all, when I copied and pasted, just went a little crazy. Or quote from the passage to support your ideas. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to really do that too much on the test, but you can definitely copy and paste in your response. Like, so if you see something in the passage that I give you that's like really interesting, you can copy paste and say, when she says this, this is what she means. So you can kind of use, again, go back to that original passage, really show how that passage, and then break that passage apart and show how it connects to the other themes and other works that we've read in class. Let me give you an example question. This is from the story, The Yellow Wallpaper. In the spring, we are able to cover a little bit more than in the fall because we have more days. I don't know if you all realize that, but we have more days in the spring than in the fall. So typically in the spring, I throw in a couple more short stories, and one of them is called The Yellow Wallpaper. It's about a woman who's had a baby. This is at like the turn of the century. We're talking like early 1900s. And is probably suffering from postpartum depression. And her husband / doctor, he's both, has recommended that she be sequestered away in their bedroom with yellow wallpaper, with no mental activities. She's not allowed to write. She's not allowed to read. She's not allowed to socialize. She slowly goes like completely psychotic. She has a psychotic episode. This is a quote, a passage from that short story. I sometimes fancy that in my condition, if I had less opposition and more society and stimulus. But John says the very worst thing I can do is think about my condition, and I confess it always makes me feel bad. So that's the passage from the short story. And then I took these 3 responses for actual student test, none of whom is an English major. Here's one example response. Student 1 says, the narrator here is going crazy because of the yellow wallpaper and is obsessed with it. She just had a baby and is stuck in this big house her husband has taken her to. This is a story about a woman who feels trapped. Okay, what's not great about this? This is not a great response, because really, this is only a summary of the entire story. There's no paraphrase of this passage, and there's no analysis. So please don't do that. Like, if you memorize something for like The Handmaid's Tale, this is a story of women who are changed, you know, made into handmaids. And it's a very oppressive society. It's called Gilead. You know, don't do that. Like, that's showing me nothing except that you can read a summary online of what these stories are about. So that would not get you many points. If you did that for all your responses, you would fail this test. Okay, student number 2 response to this one, right? The narrator is saying in this passage that she thinks she knows what might make her better, which is more stimulus, more interaction with other people. However, her husband John disagrees, and since he is a doctor, she listens to him. This is fine. This is a paraphrase of this passage, but it's only a paraphrase of this passage. There's no analysis. So again, that wouldn't do really great either. I mean, it would get more points than response number 1, but it's not going to be an A or B response. Okay, so here's the third one. And this does do an effective job both paraphrasing the passage, putting it in her own words, and then also a deeper analysis. The narrator, Jane, is explaining in this passage the huge disconnect she has with both her husband and herself. She confesses that she might know better than her husband, Doctor, what would make her better, society and stimulus. For months now, she has been sequestered away from other people and even forbidden to write. She has to sneak around to write the passages we read. Her husband even tells her not to think about her condition, which seems like odd and contrary advice. After all, she has merely asked to see other people. Yet he tells her any such activity would somehow remind her of her condition. One questions, would it remind her or embarrass him? He, as in many other times in the story, exercises his control over her, believing he knows better than she. She is just a woman wife, after all. What is good for her? It reminds me of the sentence in Chopin's Story of an Hour, that marriage gives permission to a person to exercise his or her control will over another. Eventually, Jane must go mad to experience the freedom she desires. Now, this is a very unique perspective from a student. It really digs deep into that passage. It's connecting that particular passage to other points in the story, right? Other parts, he says this and this and this. And then it even connects to another short story that we read in the spring, Chopin's Story of an Hour. So you can see there's lots going on in this passage. It's showing that the student has not only read and understood, but is making connections between that passage and other parts in that short story, and that passage and other things read for class. Beautiful. Okay. Here's an example that you can go through if you want to. This again, what you would do with this passage is you would tell me, the title of the work, the author, who is speaking into whom, or what the passage is referring, and the significance. And here, I hope most of you notice that this is, obviously The Handmaid's Tale. So you would, we know that this is Offred speaking. You could say that about anything from The Handmaid's Tale. So I want to go a little deeper on the who is speaking into whom, or to whom what the passage is referring. I would break this down a little bit more into Offred is speaking about what Aunt Lydia has been telling the young women at the Red Center and trying to brainwash them. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then the significance, you're going much, much deeper and giving me your unique interpretation. Yours. So don't throw on here what you think I want to hear. Throw in here what you think is going on. But again, remember, make those connections to this passage and other parts in the novel. This passage and maybe something Simone de Beauvoir says, right? Like, make those connections. Even this passage and other things we've read in class, like if you can make connections to preciousness, if you can make connections to Marina, that would be fantastic. So there are many choices. Some of you might even make connections to something you've read in another class, like something you've been thinking about, make connections to the world is great too. All right, let's take a look now at the essay possibilities. Okay, so on Tuesday, September 29th as well, so you're gonna be taking a test, but also giving me this essay. I really do feel like writing this essay helps you to study for the test. Like, it really will, because whatever story you pick, that's, you're gonna be so good at recognizing the passages and on the test, and it'll help you really formulate a better response on the test. So that's why I want you to try to turn that essay in before you take the test, if that makes sense, everybody? Okay. All right, so here's number one. You will be turning this essay into turnitin.com through Canvas by hopefully class time, but again, before you take the test on that Tuesday. So we won't be having any class on Tuesday. It'll just all be taking this test. Number one, thus humanity is male, and man defines woman not in herself, but as relative to him. She is not regarded as an autonomous being. She is simply what man decrees. Thus, she is called the sex, by which is meant that she appears essentially to the male as a sexual being. For him, she is sex, absolute sex, no less. She is defined and differentiated with reference to man, and not he with reference to her. She is the incidental, the inessential, as opposed to the essential. He is the subject, he is the absolute, she is the other. Now remember, that comes from Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex. Okay, with this quote in mind, examine the young female protagonist in Clarice Lispector's Preciousness. Compare, contrast how this young girl saw her own subjectivity, that is, her preciousness, and compare, contrast that with how others, especially men, saw her. Did this young girl resist or accept being made the other? If she loses her subjectivity, how does she lose her subjectivity? And then how do you know that she has lost her preciousness, her subjectivity? Use direct quotes and clues from the story to support your interpretations. This is really crucial. You guys can be brilliant and you'll say, oh, when I read this, blah, 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 I thought this. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, wait. Where did you have that interpret? Like maybe you come up with this really unique interpretation. And if you don't tell me where in the story you got this from, I might be like totally confused, okay? So just remember that every time you make an interpretation, every time you say, well, this is what I think, you need to be able to back that up with proof from the story, because it might not be what I think. And that doesn't make it wrong at all. It just means you need to assume that I don't agree with you, if that makes sense. You should assume that I'm sitting here going, really? That's what you think? Why would you think that? So if you're writing your paper and every time you make a claim, any type of claim about a character's motivation or about what the author was intending, just think Professor Qualls is sitting back and going, all right, prove it. All right, okay. So number 2, study the quote above by Simone de Beauvoir, so this right here, and then think about why a subject, that is a human being, right, a complex, wonderful human being, would accept being made or being seen or being treated like an object, like the other. De Beauvoir writes, no subject will readily volunteer to become the object, the inessential. That's on page 300. She questions then why women throughout history have accepted being made the other or an object. Now, analyze the ways and methods used on the women in Gilead, especially handmaids, to get them to accept their oppressed roles in this society. What is done to these women to strip them and convince them to accept the axiom, woman is womb? So use direct quotes and clues from the novel to support your interpretation. So that's really just going into like, why does Offred, why do these handmaids seem to accept being kind of like seen and made and treated like this object, this walking womb, right? And you can kind of go through the different ways in which they are brainwashed, the different ways in which perhaps they are physically beaten, the ways in which they are told that their position is so special and that's why they accept it. So does that make sense, everybody? Go into the different ways in which these women are made to accept their oppressed position. Okay, and then number 3. Margaret Atwood in an interview with New York Times, it's a really awesome interview and I'll throw that on there too on the email I'm gonna be sending you, the announcement I'm gonna be sending you about all this information. It's a really, really good one. I'd read it if I were you. It's really short. Okay, novels are not slogans. If I wanted to, this was, by the way, in response to the question, is this a feminist novel? Are you trying to make a sort of feminist statement? And Margaret Atwood was sort of like, kind of slapped the guy down, actually. It's kind of fun. It's fun to read. Novels are not slogans, she tells him. If I wanted to say just one thing, I would hire a billboard. If I wanted to say just one thing to one person, I would write a letter. Novels are something else. They aren't just political messages. The book is an examination of character under certain circumstances. It's not a matter of men against women. It's a study of power and how it operates and how it deforms or shapes the people who are living with that kind of regime. So she sort of resists this, like, look, if it's a feminist novel, that would simplify this novel. It would be, reducing it to just one message. She thinks that there are many, many sort of lessons learned in this novel, many things that she wants to try to communicate to us as the reader. So now it's your turn. If Atwood did not write this novel to give us a simple slogan like men are evil and women are better, because obviously when women get the chance of like being in their own environment, like the Red Center, think about that. It's mostly women, aunts, handmaids. I don't know about you, but I didn't see that as some sort of like women's utopia. I didn't think like, ooh, wow, they got it right. What is she trying to say in this novel, do you think? What was she trying to get us to see about power and how it deforms and shapes both the oppressed, like the handmaids, the women, but also the oppressors? Like she's saying, this kind of power structure, it messes everybody up. That the commander and Serena, those in power, they're getting deformed too by having power located in just one gender's hands. And not even just one gender, because a lot of men in this society don't have a lot of power either. It's those commanders at the top who have all the privileges, all the rights, all the freedoms that they have stripped away from everybody else. Does that make sense? Like, so that does something to those men too. That kind of grasping on to power, it deforms them too. It changes them in ways that aren't healthy. Okay. So what I want you to do then is come up with what you think were the complex and deep messages Atwood is trying to send us through the words and experiences of Offred. Again, use direct quotes and clues from the novel to support your interpretations. Okay, and then number 4, many critics have called Offred sappy. I've read lots and lots of criticisms of The Handmaid's Tale, especially when it first came out. When it first came out, a lot of critics saw Offred as weak, submissive, surprisingly submissive. Others, however, usually more recent ones, have found her a survivor, in her own way strong, in her own way trying to resist what this society is making her become. So what are your views? Are there ways Offred rebels or breaks the rules? Does she possess any real power at all? You may want to compare or contrast her with Moira, her foil, to dig a bit deeper here, because we've used our last discussion board to talk about that, really comparing, contrasting Moira with Offred. You know, you're gonna have to wait until you read the rest of the novel, unfortunately, to maybe really answer this one, because more stuff happens. Okay, just letting you know. So use direct quotes and clues from the novel to support your interpretations. This last one is come up with your own thesis. This essay must, however, I mean, you can always come up with your own thesis. You can always say, none of this really thrills me, Professor Qualls. I really want to take a look at religion, for example, and how it's used throughout this novel and how it's abused. Great, you know? So if I haven't given you a question that you're like, woo, and you really want to explore something else, perfect. But the essay must cover one of the works we have read and studied so far. So I had one student one time who turned in an essay, and I was like, this is over the Scarlet Letter. It was obviously written from high school. And, you know, the student was sort of like, oh, I thought we could just write anything we wanted. I was like, no, it has to be over something we've read in class. Okay, I thought that was obvious, just making it obvious. But make sure also that it's arguing a point or a thesis. So if I had another student who wrote, didn't check with me first, and wrote a paper just basically giving the biography of Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood was born in Canada. She went to Harvard, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was not an analysis at all. It was just giving me information. And this is why I want you to check with me so that we can work on a thesis together. You can tell me, this is kind of what I want to do. Here's my thesis. If it's a really great one, I'm going to go, yay, go for it. But if it's sort of like, we need to narrow this down, this needs to be a little bit more focused, then I can help you reach the point where we're both happy and you can go ahead and write your paper. Please remember, a more creative interpretation, one through music or visual art, is absolutely appreciated and acceptable. If you're thinking about creating your own thesis or prompt or creating a project, please give me a heads up on your idea before you commit time and effort, so email me, please. When you turn in your creative project, you can either drop it off at my office in McClure 126. We probably won't even see each other. You'll have your mask on and you can just, or you can upload your creative project through Canvas. Just remember, if you don't feel comfortable coming onto campus, or you can't because, I don't know, you're in Ireland, then make sure it's a project that you can take a photo of or somehow upload through Canvas, because otherwise I can't give you points if I can't see it. Again, I know that's obvious, but just wanted to let you know. But you must also write an artist interpretation. An artist interpretation will be about 1 page long. Doesn't have to be really formal. You don't have to have an introduction. You don't have to have a body or conclusion. And it can include any quotes or passages or scenes from the story that inspired you. So some people, like, they have this one scene from the novel and it's driving them to create a visual representation, if that makes sense, right? So tell me what that connection is. It is also a chance to tell me what you were trying to accomplish with your work of art. For example, if you use certain colors, why? If you made certain lighting choices when using photography, what effect were you going for? So usually in art, again, everything has meaning. Everything is an interpretation. The colors, the medium, what you were using. Was it a 3D object? Is it clay? Is it, you know, painting? I mean, all that is part of that interpretation of the novel. So this, again, the artist's interpretation is a way to help me see what you want me to see. Sometimes I look at a piece of art, I'm like, oh, I don't get it. You know, like, what's this? So this is your chance to kind of justify what you did with that piece of art. Okay, so please, please, please remember, if you're writing an essay, to use 15 to 20% of your essay should be direct quotes, but not more. If you have like 90% of your essay or direct quotes from A Handmaid's Tale, that means you are not analyzing. You're copying and pasting from a novel, and that doesn't really show your interpretation skills. But if you don't use any, if you use no quotes, then that is really not good. And listen, everybody. I mean, if you give me absolutely no quotes, that's starting at a C paper. You have to justify your interpretations using the text. You can't just say, this is what I think. You have to back it up with quotes from the text. Okay. If you have a lot of grammar errors, unclear organization, inadequate support, all that stuff, that will really, really hurt your grade. So please consult the Writing Center for help if you need some help. And here's how to make an appointment through them. It's all online. You know, you can do it from Ireland. You can do it from your house. You can do it from your dorm room. I would definitely suggest you probably give them at least 24 hours to read and then give back some of their comments. Okay. And I am also really, honestly, more than happy to help you through this process. So if you want to call me or email me with rough drafts, that's fine too. Please remember, you can go through this rubric yourself, but 70% of your grade is going to be based on what you are saying. Okay. Like how good is your thesis? And remember that your thesis should just be your interpretation, what you think is happening. And then your content, like how well are you supporting it? Do you include appropriate, effective, and passages, quotes from the text, the insights, unique, original, deep? So 70%, but the other 30% is going to be how you say it. Like do you have basic sentence level errors? Do you not use MLA appropriately, blah, 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 blah. That can affect your grade as well. So again, it's been a while since you've done any serious writing, then you might want to go to the Writing Center and just get somebody else to help you with that. Okay, you may use outside sources besides the stories if you desire, but please, 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 really, honestly, all I want is you, your marvelous brain, and the text. You know, if you want to bring in outside sources, that's great. But sometimes when my students do that, it's like they don't know what they think or feel, and so they're using outside sources to tell them what they think or feel, and that to me is a sign that you're not really engaging with the text. You're letting somebody else engage with the text and then using them. So just be careful. I'd rather it just be you and your marvelous brain and the novel or the short story itself. If you do bring in outside sources, though, please use correct MLA in both the in-text citation and works cited page, because I need to know where you're getting this information from. I need to know if it's legitimate. I can only know that if you give me all the source information at the end. For anything used through Canvas, though, because Canvas is weird, like Marina, you read through Canvas, Preciousness, you read through Canvas. Do not worry about giving me a works cited page. I know where to find them, right? It's on my Canvas page. So let's not even worry about a works cited page. If you're just doing, for example, The Handmaid's Tale, you're just doing Preciousness, you're just doing Marina. However, in the essay itself, please cite the author and page number, okay? Especially the page number, because sometimes you'll give a quote and I'll be like, that's a great quote. I don't remember where it came, where is that quote from? If you don't give me a page number, I can't find it. So here's an example. If in your essay you're discussing Judith Ortiz Cofer's story, Marina, follow this example. Marina displayed every acceptable feminine attribute. She was a lovely, quote unquote, lovely girl with cafe con leche skin and waist-long, thick black Indian hair. Again, proper MLA, you have the author's last name, there's no comma, and then the page number, and then the period. So just use that. Again, that you do not have to give me a works cited page because I know where to find it. This will greatly help me check your quotations for accuracy, though, too. Like sometimes people will quote something and I'm like, that's not what she said. So I can go back, find the quote on page 118 and make sure that it's accurate. I realize not everyone is comfortable writing about literature, and some of you have had little practice. So please, please, please contact me. Again, just like I said, I feel like sometimes my students they feel trapped in a corner, and that's when they tend to either cheat or they just give up. Don't give up. Don't feel like your last resort is to use somebody else's thoughts and words. I tell you, I went to calculus all the time. I had to take calculus class at Truman as an English and philosophy major. It was pretty terrible. And I was shameless. And I couldn't have been prouder of that B. I got a B and I was like, woo, I was so proud of myself. So please reach out for help. There's no shame at all. All right, I hope that was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will be sending all of this information out with in an email or announcement. So hopefully, you can pick out a prompt and start writing and start thinking about studying for the test. Okay, bye-bye everybody.